One common prediction about generative AI is that it will affect knowledge work the most. And that makes sense. A growing body of research is trying to map how generative AI will affect different occupations. And the pattern is becoming clear. Jobs that rely heavily on producing, processing, and analyzing information are more exposed. In some cases, generative AI is already changing how these jobs are done. In others, the disruption is just beginning. So the value inside many knowledge-based occupations is starting to shift. But the same research often suggests that jobs built around human interaction may be less exposed. Think of healthcare workers, caregivers, plumbers, electricians, and other skilled trades. These jobs depend not only on knowledge, but also on physical presence, trust, judgment, and direct human care. At first glance, these occupations seem more protected from generative AI. But today, I want to focus on a troubling trend. Even if generative AI does not directly replace these workers, another kind of AI is already reshaping their work. Predictive AI, algorithmic management, and platform-based labor systems. One example is what some people call the Uberization of healthcare. This refers to the rise of gig-style platforms for nurses, nursing assistants, and other healthcare workers. Companies such as CareRef, Clipboard Health, and others use AI to match workers with hospitals and healthcare facilities that need staff or these workers. On the surface, these platforms present themselves as technology companies. They say they are giving nurses more autonomy, more flexibility, and more control over their schedules. And the market seems to agree. Some of these companies have reached valuations more than $1 billion. Many have also been celebrated as innovative startups or as companies that could transform healthcare work. Their pitch is simple. Nurses can choose when they work, where they work, and how much they work. But recent research suggests that this promise comes with serious costs. The first problem is the uncertainty of gig work. These apps match nurses and nursing assistants with hospitals and healthcare facilities that need staff. But shifts can be cancelled at the last minute. For workers, that creates real consequences. A nurse may arrange childcare for her children, travel to a facility, or turn down other work only to find that the shift has been cancelled. That means that they lose the day's pay, but they still have to pay for childcare, transportation, or other costs. And even when a shift is not cancelled, the work can be full of surprises. Many nurses arrive at a new facility without any orientation. They may not know where to find medical histories, medication lists, or supply closets. They may have to figure out the layout, the systems, and the routines on their own. This is stressful for workers, but it can also be risky for patients. The second problem is that these platforms can create a race to the bottom. On many apps, workers compete against one another to win shifts. In practice, this can mean that the workers willing to accept the lowest rate is more likely to get the job. So two nurses may do the same work in the same kind of facility but receive very different pay. Researchers call this algorithmic wage discrimination. The case of Ashley, a nursing assistant in rural Pennsylvania, shows how this can work. Because she was classified as an independent contractor, she was also responsible for her own taxes and was not protected in the same way as a regular employee. After fees and taxes, she took home less than $8 an hour. That is barely above Pennsylvania's minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. But if Ashley had been hired as an employee in the same state as a certified nursing assistant, she might have earned closer to $20 an hour. So the promise of flexibility can hide a very different reality: lower pay, fewer protections, and more risk pushed on to the worker. The third problem is the legal risk. Many gig nursing platforms require workers to resolve disputes through arbitration instead of going to court. That means nurses and nursing assistants may have fewer options if something goes wrong. And because they're often classified as independent contractors, they may also be personally responsible for certain losses, damages, or liabilities that happen during their work. So platform provides the app, the facility gets the labor, but the worker carries much of the uncertainty and risk. And this does not affect workers alone. Patients are affected too. When healthcare workers arrive without proper orientation, face unstable schedules, compete for lower pay, and carry legal and financial stress, the quality of care is likely to suffer. Imagine being a patient in that situation. You are handed over to a nurse who's doing their best, but who's never worked inside that hospital before. They may not know how to access your medical information quickly. They may not know where basic supplies are kept. They may not know who to ask for help. For most patients, that would be frightening. And the pressure does not stop there. These platforms often use ratings and algorithmic systems to evaluate workers. A poor rating can mean being pushed down in the search results, receiving fewer shifts, or facing penalties in pay. So the worker is under pressure from every direction, from the hospital, from the platform, and from the patient's needs, and from the algorithms watching their performance. That pressure can make it harder to provide good care. So both nurses and patients can suffer under this model. And yet many of these platforms are pushing regulators to accept their business model. They argue that they should not be treated like traditional healthcare staffing firms. Instead, they want to be treated as a new kind of technology company. Their argument is similar to Uber's. Just as Uber says it digitally dispatches drivers, these companies say they are digitally dispatching healthcare workers. And that comparison should worry us. Driving someone across the town is not the same as caring for a patient in a hospital bed. Healthcare workers are not just being matched to a task. They are entering a complex care environment where information, trust, coordination, and accountability matters. Some states have resisted these efforts, of course, but others have allowed these companies to gain ground. For example, in 2022, Colorado passed a law that limited local regulation of healthcare worker platforms and helped protect these companies from certain kinds of worker misclassification lawsuits. This is a concerning development because algorithmic systems are reorganizing work that we once thought would be protected. Healthcare may not be automated in the same way as writing, coding, or data analysis, but it can still be transformed by platforms, ratings, algorithms, and gig work models. It can shift the risk away from companies onto workers. It can weaken labor protections, it can make care more fragmented, and it can turn essential healthcare work into another market for corporate profit. So the real question is not just will AI replace workers, but how will AI and algorithmic platforms change the conditions under which people work? And in healthcare, that question is urgent and important, because when systems fails nurses, it can also fail patients. I'll see you next time with another important research question on Devil Wears Data. Thank you so much for joining me today.